The station that makes you feel good.
Welcome back to Stoma for Life. I am truly grateful to introduce today's guest, Faizel Jacobs from the South African Society of Ostomates, lovingly called SASS. Now, SASS is a non-profit organization established by Ostomates across Southern Africa with a mission of facilitating a holistic approach to ostomy patient care. The organization works tirelessly to bridge the gap between the private and public sectors while advocating for the rights of ostomates throughout the country. One of the critical issues SASS addresses is the lack of access to ostomy care products, particularly in the state healthcare sector. This gap often stems from the widespread ignorance, not just about what a stoma is, but also about the profound impact it has on the lives of those living with one. Faizel, a colorectal cancer survivor, brings a unique perspective to this course. Through his own journey as an ostomate, he recognized a significant lack of education, understanding, and empathy within the wider community towards ostomates. Along with fellow ostomate Heather White, he co-founded this organization in 2020 to tackle these challenges ahead and ensure that no ostomate feels unsupported or overlooked. I'm truly honored to have Faizel with us today to share more about his journey, the vital role of SASS, and how we can all contribute to building a more inclusive and understanding society for ostomates. Faizel Jacobs, welcome to Stoma for Life.
Thank you so much for having me on, and well done to you on creating this remarkable platform. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And I mean, we've already, prior to the interview, agreed on raising awareness, which is so important in what we both do. Now,
Yeah.
I said that you are a co-founder of SASS. Perhaps take us back to what actually led you to taking the step in 2020 to create the society.
So back in 2016, I thought I had hemorrhoids, and I ended up in the GP's office for something completely unrelated. It wasn't exactly something I wanted someone to go and check out there. It's the nether regions you don't go to. And I just said to the GP, oh, by the way, I've got these hemorrhoids, and the usual over-the-counter stuff isn't working. Can you please grab something else? And he said those dreaded words, let me see. And he says, no, this doesn't look like hemorrhoids. I think we need to schedule a colonoscopy, which was done. And I was almost ignorant going into this, didn't think anything. I was in my early 40s. I'm young, I'm healthy. I went into this, and after the colonoscopy, I was in the bathroom when the surgeon came into the ward, and he was, where's Mr. Jacobs? So to put it into perspective, he's this big burly Afrikaner. Think of a typical South African rugby player.
Yeah.
That was Dr. Skitter. He even sounds like a rugby player.
Yes.
And he was, I'm sorry, this doesn't look good. It looks like you may have cancer, but either way, you're going to have a bag. And
Wow.
it was like, I heard everything he said, but I stopped listening after the word cancer. It was pretty much a death sentence. It's sort of the relationship we draw with cancer. You're dying. And about 3 weeks later, I had the surgery that gave me the stoma. And it was only after the surgery and having this colostomy did I realize, okay, this is it. And I had my first of a few meltdowns in the ICU ward, waking up, seeing this bag attached to me, this big clear bag, and all this gunk running out. And I freaked out. And my whole focus up until then was all around the cancer. And only then did it shift to, okay, so this is the stoma thing he's speaking about. And I realized there wasn't a lot of information available for us. Not a lot of support. And people were going stop asking questions. Hush, don't speak about this.
Mm.
And that's not who I am. I need to know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I started this journey, and I think what made it more difficult for me as part of the whole grief process, and that grief process, they explain to you as this little graph, but they don't tell you it's got all sorts of kinks and curves. But part of that was the negotiation phase. And I remember going, Ya Allah, dear God, now help me beat this thing. And if I can inspire one person, alhamdulillah, all praise be to you. And it was worth it.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate. A week after the surgery, we got the results of the biopsies.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very confident that we caught the cancer early.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't need any further treatment.
Yeah.
And that evening, a group of friends came to me and said, well, they came to see me in hospital. And they were like, okay, you're cancer free. So come and run the Chicago Marathon with us as a cancer survivor.
Wow.
We're raising funds for a pediatric oncology hospital being built in Palestine. And I remember looking up and going, dude, you were quick, eh? And I just said, yeah, okay. And I didn't realize it was 5 months later. And preparing for that marathon opened up a whole world of hurt for me as an ostomate.
Mm-hmm.
Pouches falling off because of the sweat, the activities, and my nurse, bless her, Sister Monica, a lot of her experience was with pediatric patients and then the older patient. And, I kind of come to believe at that time that it's predominantly old people that has this thing.
Yeah.
And so she didn't have a lot of experience with someone wanting to be active. So
Mm-hmm.
she also herself had to do a lot of research. And it was actually a online Facebook group where I started getting the most support and sort of education. And that was the Ostomy Lifestyle Athletes.
Okay.
And
I just want to know, when you were in hospital, you were speaking about your nurse. Is that a dedicated stoma nurse that you had there, or was it just a normal nurse?
so in hospital, the normal nurses didn't want to come near me.
Okay. Yeah.
When I remember I needed to change my pouch, and at that point, Monica wasn't there yet to come and show me how to change, and they found her. They said, "No, we don't know what to do here."
Okay.
Monica is a stoma nurse.
Mm-hmm.
She's retired now. And I think that's part of the challenge as well. There's not a lot of education within the nursing community related to this.
Yeah.
In fact, I think nurses, if you look at a urostomy, an ileostomy, or a colostomy, it's the same thing for them.
Yeah. Those three things are completely different, like a ileostomy, a colostomy, a urostomy. And to not have, I suppose, the nurse there to support you from the onset must have been challenging.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, when it was already a freak out for me. And keep in mind, about 3 days before surgery, I met Monica for the first time.
Okay.
And she did the sighting, and she did the whole what to expect. And I'm sure, knowing her now, I know she did a good job. But
Yeah.
at that time, my mind was on, I've got cancer and I'm dying. So
Yeah.
not a lot sort of stuck with me there. And as I said, when I woke up in surgery and I saw this pouch, and it was a big clear bag, and I was like, is this my life?
Yeah.
Is this going to be it? And I freaked out. And the nurses didn't know a lot. Just the one nurse was very kind, very compassionate, and she just said, Mr. Jacobs, don't worry. This is not the bag you're going to have. You're going to have a much smaller bag.
Yeah.
It sort of put me at ease, but it was still, I'm crapping into a bag here. And yeah, it's when I got moved from ICU into the general ward, and keep in mind, I wasn't in the state sector. I was in private healthcare. So supposedly it's supposed to be a lot better. And even there, there wasn't a lot of support from the nurses in the ward. And when we would run into an issue, they would call Monica.
Okay. Well, bless Monica. I mean,
Yeah.
she, like you said, in retrospect, she did a marvelous job. And I know that she must have laid groundworks for you the way you are. Well, you created a society now dedicated to this. But I don't want to fast forward too much, because what about that marathon 5 months afterwards? Did you do that?
I did. I finished it. It was,
Wow.
and even that, put aside the pouch leaks that
Mhm.
I battled with.
Yeah.
And then obviously at the same time, our body's going through changes. So obviously the pouching system needs to change, and it's trying to figure out what is working. Put all of that aside, and then you go to what surgeons and nurses tell you. Don't lift anything heavy.
Mhm.
You don't want a hernia.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did that marathon, and I probably had about 3 weeks worth of gym sessions.
Wow.
I just avoided the gym. I
Mhm.
avoided the ab work.
Yeah.
About 28 kilometers in, I was sort of hunched over, running, holding up my belly because I couldn't hold myself upright anymore. And
Mhm.
it's all because I avoided the gym. The gym work, it was just run. Just
Mhm.
keep running. Again, what I know today, what I've learned today, if I've gotten the stoma 15 years ago, that would have meant I would have been too afraid to pick up my boys.
Yeah. Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think our clinicians need a lot more education,
Mhm.
and not just about what it is, but the actual impact on the individual living with it.
Yeah. And everybody's unique.
Exactly, exactly. And I think the thing they don't realize is that there's so many scenarios that has to be taken into consideration when prescribing. And I think it's important, we got to emphasize the fact that our pouching systems is a prescription.
Mhm.
And what works for one, as you mentioned, doesn't work for the other. I liken it to a pair of spectacles. So we're both wearing spectacles,
Mm.
and the function of our spectacles is to help us see better. But you and I cannot interchange our spectacles. There's a whole lot of factors that
Yeah.
gets taken into
Yeah.
consideration.
Perfectly described. Yes.
Thank you. So a week ago, we were in KZN, which is on the northeast coast of South Africa, and we hosted a educational workshop for nurses.
Mhm.
And they couldn't, they looked at me like I was weird when I said to them, so I'm currently on a closed pouch because I started training again. So with all the training and we in this, we're moving into summer. It's hot. I perspire a lot, so my stoma also swells as I'm working out. And the longer I work out, it can go up to 5 centimeters.
Mhm.
5 mils bigger than what it usually is.
Yeah.
So that's why I use a closed pouch.
Mhm.
So it's a one-use pouch. So if you take without the gym work, it's 2 pouches per day. I change in the morning when I wake up, and then again in the evening before I go to bed. But if I had moved from Cape Town to Durban, so keep in mind for this joke to hit hard, Durban is full of Indians, right?
Mhm.
Um, so if I move from Cape Town to Durban, I'm going to average more than 2 pouches per day. And it's got nothing to do with the curries in Durban. It's got everything to do with the humidity in Durban.
Yeah. Yes.
So a person's lifestyle needs to be taken into consideration, how young they are. Somebody with arthritic fingers, you're not going to give them a two-piece pouching system.
Mhm.
Then you need finger dexterity.
Yeah.
So it's not a one size fits all.
Now, obviously, you saw the lack of information out there, and I'm sure that was your drive to create the society. Now, perhaps take us back to when you did, because it was 2020. I mean, that's when the pandemic started, or when we were actually in a pandemic. That must have not been the easiest of times to start a society, but still, you found it so vital and necessary to do it. And
Mm.
I'm sure the Ostomates in South Africa are so grateful that you did. So perhaps just take us back to that decision time when you actually decided to do it.
So I have to be honest, both Heather and I were extremely naive when we started it. It was predominantly around the lack of education, and advocacy was the furthest thing from our minds. And there was a lot of talk about within the ostomy community, going, we are disabled. And that angered me. I just finished a freaking marathon. And another friend of mine, Lorata Munyatsi, it's about 2 years ago now, she conquered Kilimanjaro as an ostomate.
Wow.
And then you have Jeline Taylor, who you had on,
Yes.
who's a double ostomate, and she's a model. I mean,
Yeah.
what the hell's your problem?
Yeah.
And so it was there was a lot of we can live life, and then it wasn't until I got called to do a motivational talk at the Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital up in Johannesburg,
Mhm.
and it's a state sector hospital, and I started getting very frustrated with the people in the room. There was about 100 ostomates, and we need a disability grant. How do we get onto the disability grant? And I'm like, but we are not disabled.
Mm.
And I started listening, hearing and listening. And I think that's important. That we got to there's a distinction between the two. You can hear something, but listening to what they're saying it's more important. And it was only then that I realized that they were battling to get pouches within the state sector.
Mm.
And when you get it, and especially the fact that we were sort of coming out of the pandemic, but we were in the soft lockdown, as we called it. So you had social distancing, clinic hours was limited, and it also meant that the movement of product was restricted.
Yeah.
So people were getting on average 2 to 5 pouches to last them for a month.
Oh my. Oh my.
Exactly. 2 to 5 pouches for a month. And I started realizing, but no, wait, hold on, you can't live. How are you going to live? And then I started to realize, but there's this one size fits all approach, because they were giving a colostomy drainable pouch to an ileostomy patient,
Ooh.
or they were giving a urostomy pouch to an ileostomy patient,
Oh
because
my.
there's a tap on both of them. And people were suffering with skin issues. And that's when we shifted. That was sort of a year and a half into the formation of this educational society. That we shifted that, hold on, this is a lot more than just education. There's a lot of advocacy that needs to happen here as well.
Yeah. And I mean, I always say I can live the way I can because I've got a good healthcare system, or I've got good bags that fit me and that support me in my life. I mean, if I would think of just having 5 pouches a month, I mean, that's just, you know,
The anxiety alone.
absolutely. And your mental health, I don't even want to think about it because I mean, I get anxious when I go on holiday. I always pack too much, like 1.5 times the amount, just not to run out, because that would be, I don't even want to think about it.
A couple of 2 years ago, we went on holiday to Zanzibar, and we were there for 12 days in total. We were going to travel. I had enough pouches with me to last 20 days,
Yeah.
right? I rationed.
Mhm.
Sorry, I budgeted this, and you're limited with stock, but you can take with you. And the humidity in Zanzibar is something else. And I was flying through pouches, and I started getting very anxious. And on the way back, we had to fly from Tanzania to Ethiopia. We were in Ethiopia for 2 days before coming back to South Africa. I had 3 pouches left by the time I got to Ethiopia.
Wow.
And then I started phoning pharmacies in the area. I had
Mhm.
no idea what I was talking about.
Yeah.
And then I immediately went into, I'm starving myself. I'm not eating.
Mhm.
I'm looking for Imodium, sort of antidiarrheal, just to force myself to get blocked. And it's no way to live.
No, no. Now, if that was just one example of a short amount of time. Now, if you have that for prolonged times, for months on end, I mean, I don't want to know the mental issues these people are going through. So obviously we are going to touch more on this when we come back from the commercial break. So please do not go away.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
Start your day the right way with Revive Active's range of super supplements and get the most out of life. Take one power-packed sachet mixed with water and enjoy a super tasty health drink at work, at home or on the go. Clean, premium ingredients scientifically formulated to work in synergy to optimize your health and well-being, to support immunity, energy, joints, heart health and more. No filler, no stimulants, no artificial colours or preservatives, just the right mix of vitamins, minerals, amino acids and hero ingredients to help you put back what life takes out. Try our 7-day or 30-day boxes and use code UK Radio to get a free supplement shaker. Revive Active. Super supplements for a super you.
When you vacation with Norwegian Cruise Line, every day is a new day. Get a taste for Barcelona, then savor incredible dining options back on board one day. Connect to ancient history in Athens, and then disconnect completely in our spa another day. Wherever the sea breeze takes you, come aboard and experience a different tomorrow with NCL. Visit ncl.com, call your travel agent, or call 0333-336-1472. Norwegian Cruise Line, Ships Registry, the Bahamas and USA.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
Welcome back to Stoma for Life. I'm joined all the way from Cape Town, South Africa, Faizel Jacobs from SASS, the South African Society for Ostomates. Now, we touched on the issue of the healthcare system and obviously educating people, as you noticed and pointed out yourself, even in the sector of the nurses. Here we've got designated stoma nurses that only do this, and they are responsible. Like, I have a permanent colostomy, and I will have, maybe my stoma nurse will change through the years, but I always know I have a stoma nurse to speak to whenever I want to. And I think that's sort of my anxiety level, which is always very low, because I know there's always somebody there. So you clearly found that there is it's an absolutely necessity to get that enforced, to educate not just the individual but also the nurses. So perhaps take us to what the society actually does on a day-to-day level.
So just to put into context the shortage of qualified nurses, there's a serious lack of data and sort of record keeping within the South African context. And, people also don't like sharing data, and they hide behind things like the POPI Act, the Data Protection Act.
Yes.
But we don't need names, we need numbers. So we are estimating that there's close to 900,000 ostomates in South Africa.
Wow.
There's less than 100 qualified stoma nurses in the country.
Ooh. And I mean, some of the areas are rural areas, it's like remote. And
if you take into consideration that you often as a patient, especially in the rural areas, or even in your bigger state sector hospitals, you're not getting the pouches that you require, or you get there after having traveled for 2 days only to be told there's nothing to give you. people are living with this and using the worst I've seen, and I've seen some creative solutions, but the worst one that I've seen was plastic, sellotape, and super glue on the skin.
Oh my.
And so people aren't going to the hospitals any longer because they're not getting. So as a society, what we are very, very actively involved with is, number one, trying to get the Department of Health and the South African Nursing Council to recognize stoma therapy as a specialty. And you actually need a multidisciplinary team to look after an ostomate. It's not just a nurse. You need a dietitian, and you need a rehab specialist, because if you consider that within the first 2 years, up to 80% of ostomates within the first 2 years of having a stoma will develop a peristomal hernia.
Yeah.
And if you take, and from my understanding, this is something that happens globally, sort of the active rehabilitation is not high on the priority. And the message out there is don't lift. But we've all done laundry. You take a duvet, you put the duvet into a washing machine, it weighs 2 kilograms. You take it out, it's 200 kilograms. You're carrying your groceries.
Exactly.
So we need a rehabilitation. So we are trying to get this up, the health department and the nursing council to recognize stoma care as a specialty. And we're also trying to get it registered as, your healthcare sector, that they sort of create these buckets. And we want to fall into the vulnerable bucket. Now, I'm not saying that we are disabled or that we are vulnerable, but we become vulnerable if we don't get what we need.
Yes.
So we need to go into that. What that means is there will be a budget allocation for stoma care. And at the moment, budget is coming from wherever. There's nothing set or cast in stone. I think in most countries these days, if you take a condition like HIV, there's a set protocol that's going to happen. The nurses, you need the antiretros, you need the social work, you need the counseling, breast cancer, diabetes, all of those, there's set protocols. For stoma care, there's nothing, absolutely nothing. And it's sort of just a by the way. And they very often, and I suppose you could see why, but it gets lumped with wound care. And it's seen as a wound, and you're going to put a plaster over it, which is your bag. So a lot of what we're doing is advocating for getting this.
Yeah. Now, what has in terms of the people that follow the SASS, that are actively part of it, but also the people that you're trying to reach, what is their feeling on being educated? Are they open to it? Because, I mean, there are a lot of misconceptions around this. That's why I actually started the show Stoma for Life, because a lot of people still associate this with something that you do not talk about. And people shy away from it, and it shouldn't, because it's something that is manageable if obviously all the correct steps are in place. But how did you, or what is your feeling on the people, how they're actually taking to it, talking about it?
So I think there's still far too much stigma attached to it. And if we take the Black community in South Africa, and this is something that I'm trying to address with the supplier community, when they have a stoma and the literature that is available, they get it. It is flat-bellied white people, and they're going, "I've got a white man's disease."
Okay.
And it's very easy to perceive that. And so it's the stigmas that we have to sort of challenge, and we've got to change the narrative around that. When it comes to the clinicians that needs to be influenced, I think they get influenced very easily when you put into context what is happening. So I'll use the example of last week when we were in KZN. It was a phenomenal day that we had. Feedback from the hospital management team. We've never had such a big turnout for anything, really, as we did now. The content, they were blown away. And what put things into context was the patient's journey. When you're sharing stories of a mid-30s mom who is suicidal because she's got two kids, 2 years old, sorry, 4 years old and 6 years old. And the 4-year-old goes, "Sis, mommy, stay away from me, you stink." How do you live with that? And when you share the story of a wife that I met, and she said to me, "I really wish we met you 6 months ago. 6 months ago, the surgeon said to my husband, the surgery will change your life." And they weren't kidding, because for 6 months he tried committing suicide. And last week we buried him.
Oh, no.
And the problem wasn't the surgery. The problem wasn't the stoma. The problem was he wasn't getting the correct pouch, or he was constantly leaking. And, he's being humiliated. And when you put it into context that way, or even something as simple as, so you are rationing us when it comes to pouches. You're giving us 10 pouches for the month, right? What happens when you, that are able-bodied, and I put that in inverted commas, get diarrhea? You've budgeted, you're going to use $20 of toilet paper for the month, but now you get a bout of diarrhea. You can go to the corner shop and get some rolls, very, very cheaply. What are my options?
Exactly.
How many of you are married or have life partners or partners and are active intimately? You have sexual relationships.
Yeah. How
many of you will get intimate with your partners with dirty underwear?
Yeah.
Right. It sort of triggers the bells go off, and it's like, okay, we need to do a change. And they're driven to do that change. But then the bureaucracy comes into play. And that's where we need to try and change. And unfortunately, there's talk about them wanting to do something, but the bureaucratic red tape involved. And sadly, in some circles, it's also a case of, we'll tell you what you need to hear, and then we'll ghost you for the rest of the time. So we're still trying to break down those doors and really get a seat at the table.
Yeah. Now, I saw on your website, maybe you can just, for our listeners, just quickly share your website where people can actually look at the wonderful work that you do.
Our website address is Sastomates, SASSTOMATES.org.za, or they can follow us on our social media, on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube, Sastomates.
Excellent. Now, I saw on the website you've got a survival guide, and I've looked through the survival guide, and to everybody that's listening, you must look at it. It is done, firstly, it is lovingly put together, and it has got everything in there. I've paged through it, and I could not find anything that was missing, because you addressed absolutely everything in it. And I know it's also available in Zulu, which obviously is important for, like we've already touched on, the Black community, to have them part of the journey. It's this disease, or being an ostomate, is not defined by your where nothing.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of advocacy that has to be done, a lot of education has to be done, because obviously a lot of people, well, myself, talking about myself, I also didn't know what a stoma was until I was presented with my diagnosis. I mean, when he explained it to me, I knew what it was, but I'd never heard of it before. So there is so much that needs to be, that you need to educate. There's so many things that you have to address in educating people about it. And I think your survival guide is brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Look, the information in there is nothing new. What we've tried to do is simplify the language, and make it less clinical.
Yeah.
And currently it is available in both English and Zulu. But we do need to translate it into additional languages. We have 11 official languages in South Africa, but we probably won't get to a point where we do all of them. But we are going to hit the major languages. So it'll be English, Zulu, Afrikaans, Xhosa.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately what we're also hoping to get, and all of this takes funding, but I think it's important that we have one specific for colostomy, one specific for ileostomy, and one specific for urostomy. Because as I said a little earlier, that patients don't know what they have. We created this WhatsApp support group, and we're sort of getting it down pat with this troubleshooting exercises, because you can't just say, so on what side is your stoma? Because, it can, generally speaking, your colostomy is going to be on the left side, but it's very possible to have it on the right.
Yeah.
And, you may have some anatomy issues, which means that your stoma is completely somewhere else. So it's, what's the consistency of your stool? Is it like watery porridge, or is it toothpaste? And when you have a patient living with a stoma for 9 years and they don't know, there's a problem in the healthcare system.
Absolutely, because I find when you understand what's going on with you, it's also a form of acceptance, and the process of healing can start. But if you are sort of totally foreign to all of that, I mean, you're just treading in the dark, and it's very sad. So what you're doing is so commendable, and is so important, because I see, and from what I've heard now, there's still so much work to be done, but you're doing it. And I think that is the most important step, because even small steps will lead to results.
Yes.
You did not shy away from the mountain that lay ahead. You started, and I commend you for doing that.
Thank you. I think it's important. As for me, it's sort of become my life's purpose right now. And it's in Islam, it's charity takes many forms, and charity is held in very, very high regard. And I can't see myself going back into the corporate space. I don't earn what I used to earn. It's a hustle, but this is a need right now, and it's a desperate need for far too many people. So yeah, we're growing our circle, and I think we will get there. We may not get there in my lifetime, but we need to leave behind sort of a legacy that can continue.
Well, you certainly have already. I mean, that's, like I said, your impact has been, I mean, you yourself see the impact already, just on what you were sharing recently, being in KwaZulu-Natal. That even those stories, I mean, they are just heart-wrenching and touching as well. And that you've made your impact already. So tell me, I want to know, we're almost at the end of the show, but I'd like to actually know what's on the cards for SASS. What are your plans, your immediate plans, your long-term plans? What are you aiming to achieve in the next year?
So, as though I don't have enough on my plate. I just got back from a couple of weeks ago. I just got back from Kenya. It was a meeting called by also a previous guest of yours, Jan Volkelson, who's president of the European Ostomy Association. So there was Caroline Bromwell from the UK. There was I forget the lady's name now, but from Romania we had Germany and Jan from Iceland, and then 10 African countries.
Wow.
And it was about introducing each other, and we left there with the idea of formalizing an African Ostomy Association, because the problems in Africa is diets. You cannot compare it. You cannot comprehend what is happening in Africa. The things I've seen over the last 2 years traveling with Jan, Um, yeah. So we are in the process of formalizing an African Ostomy Association. SASS in South Africa, we are looking at ways to expand and sort of hit a broader community of nurses and clinicians to educate them about life with a stoma, and then also the clinical requirements that they need. So we're having a lot more in-person workshops, but we're also looking at how do we bring in the digital age, and sort of having the online type classes.
Yeah.
Also working with, we've started the conversation with 2 universities. How do we get more studies going? Because, it's all good and well. I can share some very, very sad stories, gut-wrenching stories, but the emotion means nothing if you don't have the data to support what it is you are saying.
Yeah.
So that's happening next year, but the big one that I'm excited about. So anybody listening, please email us or slide into my DMs. So we all know that October month is generally when we celebrate World Ostomy. And in Cape Town, every October we have the Cape Town Marathon. So it's a weekend event. On the Saturday, you have a 5-kilometer and a 10-kilometer road race. They call it the Peace Runs. And then you also have a 22 and a 42-kilometer trail run. So you're running all over Table Mountain. Stunning.
Yeah.
And then on the Sunday, you have the actual marathon itself running the streets of Cape Town. And we're hoping to bring in Ostomates from across the world to participate. And the idea behind the event is to raise the profile for ostomy care, not just South Africa, but Africa and the rest of the world, to put a spotlight on it, to break the stigmas that, no, we are not disabled. We can very much do stupid things like run 42 kilometers. But, we are not able to do that if we don't have the appliances that we require. And so far, we have some interest from the US, from Mexico, from the UK, and a couple of African countries, and hopefully there'll be more interest coming out. We will have a booth at the expo, so again we can do some call it marketing around ostomy. An interesting fact that we learned. So we did one small community race. We had an event there last year, and because I belong to that running club, I asked them to include one question on the registration forms: do you have a stoma? So we had a group of 10 ostomates that belonged to SASS that participated.
Okay.
They did the 5-kilometer fun run walk. But there were 4 ostomates that participated that we didn't know who they were.
Wow.
So, you've more than likely walked past someone who has a stoma and you didn't even know.
Yeah.
So, and people are hiding. And you don't have to hide the fact that you've got this, because you can live a full, productive life with your stoma.
Yeah.
So please, if you're interested, it doesn't have to be the stupid marathon. Come and visit the lovely Cape Town and participate, whether it's the 5K or the 42K. Please come and join, support this movement.
Everybody that's listening, please, this is a huge shout out for what's going to happen in October for World Ostomy Day, and what a beautiful setting to do it in Cape Town. And for anybody who's not been to South Africa, not been to Cape Town, you've missed out. And this is the perfect opportunity to combine not just obviously the marathon, but also the sightseeing. But
we will put up some tours for you.
Yeah. Oh, well, there are lovely tours. Trust me, I know. Faizel, it's been an absolute pleasure. In closing now, I mean, you've had so many touching stories, and for those people listening now that might be, well, surgery might be on the cards for them, or they've just had stoma surgery. Perhaps you've got a word of encouragement or things that you, when you came out of surgery, didn't know and you would like to share with them.
Number one, it does get better. I think that's the most important thing. With the support of your stoma nurse, and your stoma nurse becomes your greatest ally. So don't be afraid to tell them something's wrong, I don't know what to eat, etc. They become your greatest ally, and they will help you through that difficult time. But I think also important, don't benchmark your journey with someone else's journey. Stomas are caused for various reasons, or formed, fashioned for various reasons. And, there's comorbidities that come into play, whether it's cancer and then you're still going for chemo. It's going to impact your output, and you cannot benchmark with someone else. It is your journey. And we learn from others and what they've been through. But remember, it took me, prior cancer, I was in fairly good shape. Now, I was supposed to be in hospital for 15 days. I got discharged after 8 days. I know other people who had exactly the same surgery as me who ended up in hospital for 30 days. So it's very much an individual journey. We learn from others, but we do our own journey.
Yeah, beautifully said. And thank you for taking us on your journey, for sharing what life has actually been like ever since you had your stoma, and for the impact that you've already made on the ostomy community in South Africa, and hopefully will make for the rest of Africa. So I wish you luck with your projects, with your endeavors going forward. And I invite everybody listening to look at going to South Africa. Why not? For a marathon. It's one of the best places to go and have a run, and all for a good cause. So thank you so much, Faizel.
Thank you for having me on your show, and for the opportunity to share what is happening here, and all the best to you for taking this program just to get out.
Thank you so much. Take care. All the best. Bye for now.